Hey, what's up, YouTube boxing family? It's K-Rod here. I'm back with another good boxing video for y'all today. Let's get it right. And yeah, I definitely got a lot to say. So yeah, let's get right to it, man. I have a lot of good videos to talk about, and yeah, I wanna just give my initial thoughts on Mr. Danny Garcia talking about Jaron Boots Ennis, and what are my thoughts on Danny Garcia's comments on Jaron Ennis. And yeah, I'm gonna summarize that, and we'll get right to it. So yeah, let's get right to it, man. So Danny Garcia, he was recently asked in, I think, like, some interview. I'm not too entirely sure on like what the whole idea was, but I would assume Danny Garcia, he was just simply asked like about what do you think about Jaron Ennis's ceiling as a fighter, and like how did you visualize him coming up and blah blah blah. And I mean, Danny, he just kind of gave up the standard answer, like like any other veteran level fighter. He's a tremendous fighter. He has great talents. He knows what he's doing in the ring, and he's just super young and super hungry. And I like that out of Danny. I respect that out of him. But I think at the same token, a lot of people out of the area, out of Philadelphia, especially where Danny's from. I think he's from North Philly, and Boots, he's from West Philly. I'm not too sure, but somebody correct me on that if y'all are from, or for anybody that watches my channel, if any of you are from Philadelphia. But I'm pretty sure that's where Danny could be from and Boots could be from, but I'm not too sure. But looking at the resume of Danny Garcia, very good resume. The man deserves his credibility, and he is definitely a ticket holder for the Hall of Fame ballot. Hopefully, we can see him in there, but let's take a look at his resume and just run it down. He is 36-3 with 21 knockouts, and his last performance was against Errol Spence, which was 2 years ago. Wow. He lost in a unanimous decision. Yep, unfortunately he got blown out in that fight. But that was for the WBC IBF World Title. And yeah, Danny Garcia, he did what he had to do. And he was good enough to, solidify himself in the welterweight division. But unfortunately, things just didn't go his way, and he wasn't able to do the things that he was supposed to do. But basically, Danny Garcia, for those of you guys that don't know, he's had a very good career. He was a former 2 division world champion. He had beat the guys by the likes of Nate Campbell. That was an all-time great. Very, very good fighter back in his day. And I mean, he's fought multiple guys. That the list goes on. Guys like Kendall Holt. I think he was a former world champion, right? Yeah, he held a couple belts back in his day, if I'm not too sure. Yeah, he held. Yep. He held the WBO, world super lightweight title. Yeah, yeah. So he's beat some really, really good high level fighters himself. So I definitely give the man his props and his credibility, because he was that guy back in the day. He beat guys like Eric Morales, even though he was aged out, but still he defeated him in a dominating fashion, actually. And yeah, he beat guys like Amir Khan, beat Eric Morales in a rematch, did the same thing to Zab Judah. That was a good hell of a fight. Lucas Matisse, when he was at the man back at 140. I mean, Danny's resume can easily just be shown that he was literally that guy. So he was good for what he did in the sport, and he just did what he had to do. But I mean, as far as like how people were viewing Danny Garcia after like the welterweight division, came in, came in pretty hot with like Keith Thurman and all those guys. That's when Danny Garcia's like ceiling fell off. But I mean, he did what he had to do to, to get his stripes, in the welterweight division. And yeah, like I mean, Danny did what he had to do. Um, the thing is just that how many people would see Danny Garcia, they would think Danny Garcia is just a gatekeeper. He was never that guy to beat anybody in the welterweight division, but I disagree. I think just looking at the resume, I mean, it's not the best, but Danny Garcia has done what he had to do, at the welterweight division. I mean, you beat former world champions like, Paulie Malignaggi, Lamont Peterson, in which that fight should have demanded itself a rematch. Um, and you beat obviously aside from the Mauricio Herrera fight, but I mean like the Lucas Matisses and the like the Zab Judas and the Amir Khans and Kendall Holtz of the world, those were notable victories, back in his heyday. But it's like Danny could have easily fought guys like Adrian Broner, Terrence Crawford, in which there was some high speculation of that fight not being made properly due to the fact that Top Rank didn't want to give Danny what he was asking for. So Danny decided to go the different route by fighting, better opposition that was going to give him more money because, he was offered, the same amount of money that he fought facing Amir Khan, and Top Rank just didn't want to give him more money. And that was basically like a absolute ripoff. So Danny was like, nah, fuck that. I'm going to go a different direction. And yeah, that's when Terrence Crawford at that time frame, he fought Amir Khan because, Amir Khan, he was like the only option like available that Top Rank wanted to go, in which Top Rank could have easily had Danny Garcia fight, Terrence Crawford, but, Bob Arum being Bob Arum and being a racist piece of shit. That's how Terrence Crawford's career really got staggered. By those promoter politics. But Danny Garcia did what he had to do to try to do what he had to do, and I definitely give him nothing but credit. But I would probably have to say his comments about Jaron Ennis. I have I have no beef, against like what any fighter has to say about other fighters, but at the end of the day, if you're not taking the sport seriously and you're not looking to test yourself against tougher level opposition that's going to, bring something out of you, then I think it's time for Danny Garcia to hang it up and not box anymore. As much as I love and respect Danny Garcia's career, I like everything out of him. Danny Garcia is a hell of a good businessman. He's a great entrepreneur in his own ventures for what he gets into. He has his own clothing line. He invests. I think he's his own promoter in boxing too. So, I mean, Danny has so much to do when boxing is completely over, and I think what the time would be now where Danny should get out of the sport. But I mean, if you are still looking for like a couple good paydays, I think getting like the Mikey Garcia fight, getting a Kell Brook fight would be good. I wouldn't mind your Dennis Ugas. I think Danny versus Ugas would be a terrific fight because it's like obviously we're probably not going to see Danny Garcia facing anybody at 154, just simply because number one, like 154, that's a really really big division, and seeing Danny Garcia at that division. I don't want to see him, get smoked by opposition that I know that's going to beat him. Like, I could just easily tell, like, off the bat, Danny could possibly beat like 2 to 3 guys out of the top 10, but Other than that, I don't like, I don't think he beats a Jermel Charlo. Brian Castaño's like, somewhat winnable. He could have a chance to beat him, but I don't think that fight, will ever go the distance. I think someone's gonna get stopped, and I think Danny could very well end up getting stopped because Castano or Castaño, he is a big guy, and I'm not so sure how Danny could scale at 154 fighting a guy like him. Like, I think Danny could easily beat a guy like Terrell Gachet, or, he could have a good, somewhat good chance against a, southpaw fighter like Erickson Lubin, maybe Jamonte Clark. I don't think Jamonte is going to take Danny Garcia lightly. He's going to come to win, but I think Danny could beat some guys at 54, but knowing that he just recently turned 34, I think it's just time for Danny to hang it up. You lost to the best fighters out there, and there's no shame in that because Danny Garcia is still a Hall of Fame, level or Hall of Fame championship level fighter. So I don't think Danny has nothing else left to prove. I mean, you did what you had to do, but I mean, it if Danny believes he still has a good couple more fights left in him, then I personally think he should help out Jaron Ennis by fighting him to help boost up his name as a fighter. Because, obviously people will see that fight to be like Gatekeeper versus, demon built warrior type of fight where, you're gonna have let the demon of of the lion's den basically be fed a lesser, opposition opponent like Danny, and people will see that more to be like a sacrifice, but I don't think so. I think honestly, like, just seeing those styles, I think that's a good perfect style matchup for Jaron Ennis because that's gonna show a lot of talent that Jaron Ennis can display against a fighter that has a good chin. He has amazing power, and then on top of that, Danny Garcia has great counterpunching ability. So, just by looking at how the fight can simulate inside my head, I think seeing that fight, in the heart of Philadelphia, that's going to bring so much, attention to Jaron Ennis' style. And then on top of that, it's going to give him so much exposure as a fighter of how can he scale against a guy like Danny, and what will be the scaling of his world championship level caliber of how far he can go. Because Jaron Ennis could very well have some problems against Danny Garcia. And if Danny Garcia is able to get his punches off, then you basically know what the rest, could very well be. And I think how Jaron Ennis will take that fight is that him fighting Danny Garcia will, one, definitely show what he is as a fighter, but two, that's going to really push him to the limits of how much blood, sweat, and tears he can produce inside that fight, because Jaron will view that fight as as a world title fight in a way where you have the old veterans being challenged with the new up and coming rising star veterans that will take their spot. So I just think that's such a good stylistic matchup, and I personally like to see that fight because Jaron Ennis versus Danny Garcia would sell the fuck out. I think honestly, just looking at how that fight scales is that, I personally believe Jaron Ennis will beat Danny Garcia to a unanimous decision. But it's like Danny Garcia will give Jaron Ennis a really, really good hell of a fight. And I think Danny knows that Jaron Ennis is not this, super duper, unstoppable force. But just by looking at how that fight could play out. I think Danny understands that that Boots definitely has power, but he probably just doesn't want to go through those, warring, like basically those war torn type of battles that are going to give him a lot of wear and tear on his body. So that's obviously something that Danny doesn't want to do, because he understands that Jaron Ennis, he has a lot of youth on his side, and his his ceiling as a fighter of how much prime he has left in his career, that's going to make him more hungrier before and after the fight. But for Danny, he knows that he has a lot to lose and Boots has a lot to gain. So probably inside Danny's head, he's just thinking that, okay, yeah, even if I do fight him, you're just getting a paycheck that's hard earned money, but you're going through so much punishment to receive it. So Danny, is just, obviously looking at it from like a business angle, because, even if that fight was aired on Showtime, that fight itself doesn't really signify, the market to actually see that fight at a bigger magnitude. But, like, honestly, don't get it twisted. Like, I think Jaron Ennis versus Danny Garcia, that would be a damn good ass fight if you wanted to put that shit on pay-per-view. Just mainly because that a lot of people know who Boots is now, but having a former world champion in the welterweight division, a guy like Danny Garcia, that has been in those wars and has brought you to deep waters in, plenty of his fights. I think Jaron Ennis would definitely entertain such a good fight like that, and that would help out us, us hardcore boxing fans to actually see how good Jaron Ennis can actually scale. Because I think Jaron Ennis, he's definitely ready for the world title level, but definitely put him in there with like a guy like Danny Garcia. I think that would be really good. But just to summarize and conclude, my thoughts on the Danny Garcia comments of how he thought about Boots. I don't really have too much to really say. I definitely give Danny his props for, giving Boots his shine as a fighter, because unlike guys like Sean Porter, Danny Garcia at least understands and credits Jaron Ennis for working so hard to get to that level, and here he is, very close to getting a world title shot. So I really hope that Jaron Ennis can get his belts very soon, and we will see the king of the welterweight division be changed very soon after Errol Spence and Bud leaves, along with Danny. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think. Did you think Danny's comments were, justified to say, or do you think Danny, shouldn't have given, any mention to, Jaron Ennis? So that's about it, guys. I'll see you guys later, and peace out. Bye.